What's happening, Boot Junkies? Mike Delgadio here, back with another video on home studio setup for voiceover. And today, we're going to be taking a look at a brand new device just came on the market from Mackie. It's right here. This is called the DLZ Creator. And really, it's a station that allows you to very easily create audio content, whether that's for podcasting, for live streaming, for your YouTube, like I'm doing right here. It's a very easy device designed to facilitate creating content. We're going to walk through kind of the basics of it. I'm going to try and show you as many of the different features as I can. I won't be able to show you everything because this video will be forever long, but I'm going to try and give you a sense of what the different capabilities are. Now, right up front, I do want to say that Mackie did send me this device for the purposes of creating this video. So it is going to have that paid promotion little bug up there. That just means that they sent me the device and I don't need to send it back, but I'm not otherwise compensated. They don't get to see this video before you do. They have no editorial input on what I say. They don't have any hand on this. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you know I don't really make a buy recommendation. I'm not one of those clickbait, this is the best thing ever, you must buy it now. It's not like that. I'm just going to try and demonstrate as much of the device as I can so you can decide that if you're going to part with your money, to know if this is the right device for you. So all of that out of the way, let's dig in. I'm going to show you as much as I can, and we're just going to see how this thing works. Let's start with what you see when you first turn it on. The first thing that you notice when you first look at it is how big the screen is. Makes it very easy to see exactly what's going on. Just as a point of example, I have my phone here, one of my old phone that we're going to use for some demonstration purposes. This is a Galaxy Note 9, one of the really big phones that was out there. And if we just put that right here on the screen, you can see that the screen on the DLZ Creator is huge. Makes it really easy to see what's going on, and you can see it from a distance. We're going to use that phone to demonstrate some of the capabilities a little bit later on. So the screen is big, and it gives you lots of different information. This is a touch screen, so you'll be able to make modifications to the screen. We'll demonstrate all of that. On the bottom half, you get your output faders. So for all of the different inputs that you put into the device, the output faders will adjust how loud your audience, your viewers, whatever, will hear that signal. Next to that, we have a series of colored pads. These are sound pads that allow you to play different sound effects. So you can do something like, these are some pre-configured ones, so you get the air horn. You can get something like a momentary switch, like a beep, so you could, if you start to swear and you, I just can't believe, what, there's lots of different things that you can do. These can be long sound effects. They can be short, momentary sound effects. Above that, you see a series of colored knobs. These are multi-purpose knobs. They are controllers for things that happen on the screen. They'll be able to control things like your headphone volume. They'll be able to control different parameters on the screen. And then next to that, you see three buttons. One is a quick return home screen. So if you're in the middle of a production and you've gone down into a screen, the home button will always take you right back to it. There's a button here that's flashing red right now. That is a one-touch quick record. So you can record right in this device. You can record either to an external USB drive, which I'm doing right now. You can record to a micro SD card. There's two different USB connections on the back that allow you to connect and record directly on this device. No computer required. My computer is off. And then below that, there's a button called Auto Mix. We'll talk a little bit more about Auto Mix, and we'll try and show you what the screen looks like. But it's a quick way to automatically adjust the levels and have the device take care of it yourself. So let's first just show how we set up a microphone in the easy configuration. From the settings, make sure that you're in the easy mode by clicking the cog up here and then choose easy from the three different choices and then click next. From here, you can then go into the different channels that are available to you and choose the channel you want to configure. So in this case, I'm going to choose channel 1, so you can choose whichever channel you're going to configure. There are some presets, some icons, but really it's just a couple of clicks. You can come into microphone setup. It will ask you, what are you connecting to this? Is it a dynamic? Is it a condenser? Are you plugging in an instrument like a keyboard or your guitar? Are you using any of the Mackie mics, or are you using a common microphone like an SM7B. I've got a dynamic microphone here. I click next, and I can very easily adjust what the gain is on the microphone by sliding that back and forth. Or if you don't know what the right level will be, you can just choose listen and set up for me. So you just choose listen and set up. It drops off automatically. You just keep talking the way you should normally talk, and after a few seconds, it will automatically set that level for you. So it drops out. It doesn't record while you actually do that because it's listening to your setting, but you just press listen and set for me, and it will automatically set the gain based on the volume you're using when you talk into the microphone. From there, you're done. There's nothing to configure. It just listens, and it takes care of it for you, and it will automatically set up the typical channel strip, the typical effects that you might want for whatever microphone you've selected. If you know a little bit more, you know that you want to have some compression or you want to have a noise gate and you want to do a little bit more configuration, but you don't really know the details of it, there is another mode called enhanced mode, where if you switch to the enhanced mode, you get, and we'll go back to our channels, and we'll choose our channel. You see you get a slightly different screen here. You still get the presets. You can switch back and forth between a microphone that's a dynamic microphone or a condenser microphone. You still have the auto gain setting, but you also have advanced controls up at the top here that exposes many of the different effects that you can have for the channel, but in a slightly simplified interface. You know that you need the effect, but you don't necessarily know all the details of that setting. This will protect you from making some bad selections. So you get the three band graphic equalizer. You can turn that on or you can turn that off. You can decide whether or not you want the noise gate. You can just touch the noise gate on and off. You can turn compression on and off. You can make those adjustments here, but you don't have to get into the nitty-gritty details. The device will take care of the typical or best settings for your situation. Now, if you are more experienced and you say, I get how all of these effects work, I actually want to dig in and set these exactly to my taste, you can switch it over to Pro mode. And now when we go into the channel and we set up our microphone, we get a lot more configuration option for us. So if you understand what you need to do from an EQ perspective, for example, by switching over to Pro mode, you actually get all of the detail to configure the equalizer, the gate, the compressor. And again, it's a touch screen, so if you need to make some adjustments to the equalizer, you can move them around on screen, or you can actually use the encoders on the side, these adjustment knobs, to adjust many of the different parameters, and they're listed here on the side. So you can see that the button corresponds to whatever you're selecting. So if you need to adjust the high-pass filter, you can adjust the high-pass filter. If you need to adjust the frequency of the selected band, you can use the encoder and move that. You can decide whether you need to boost or to cut that particular frequency, for example. Keep it nice and level for the purposes of our demonstration here. But you do get a lot greater degree of configuration. And then you get some additional presets if you want. The same goes for the other configurations. So if you do want to use a noise gate, you can activate the noise gate and it will act very much like an expander. You can adjust how much compression, what the attack and release are. You can adjust that envelope. You can adjust, what the threshold would be. So you can really significantly adjust how much of an effect you want the gate to have. Sorry, I'm trying to read these from a distance and talk at the same time. So how much reduction you want with the range, you can set what you want that threshold to be, or you can turn it off altogether. Because I'm doing this on the fly, I'm just going to turn that off. But the same goes for the compressor. The compressor has a lot of different settings to it. You have a hard knee compressor. So if you want, you can turn that essentially into a brick wall limiter if you want with a 20-to-1 ratio, or you can make it a bit more gentle, and you can also have a more gentle knee on the compressor. And again, all of the different settings. If you need to have additional makeup gain after you compress, you can do that here. So you have a lot of different configuration. And lastly, the same goes for the de-esser. If there's a particular frequency that you know you need to de-ess, you can tune that in. You can say how much you want to reduce that S sound, what the threshold is before it starts to reduce, and what the frequency is of that de-esser. Since I've now messed with those knobs, I'm going to turn that off so I don't mess up the audio for the rest of the video. But the point being here is that the Pro mode allows you to really dig in and configure those settings. And those settings are configurable for all of the different channels. So every channel can have its own channel strip that you can fine tune. So if you've got different microphones, if you've got one person with an RE20, one person with an SM7B, one person with a condenser microphone, and the guitar that's plugged in, each one of them has their own channel strip that you can make those different configurations for. I did mention that there are faders that will automatically adjust on the screen and show you the setting of the faders, and these are the different output faders. If you don't want to mess with these faders during the process of your content creation, you can tell the device to just mix it for you, so that if somebody's talking and somebody's talking over somebody else, you don't have to fly those faders around. You can come over to the auto mix, and for the 4 input channels, 1, 2, 3, 4, you can actually indicate which microphone is the high priority, which input is the high priority input. So let's say if you're the host and you want to make sure that if there's an argument with your guest, you've got a couple of different guests, you know how people can sometimes talk over each other. You want to make sure that one of the microphones cuts through everybody else. You can set that one as the high priority microphone. So perhaps you and your co-host are the high priority microphones. Your guest might be the lower priority, the medium priority microphone. So you'll always go over that. And then if, sometimes a podcast will have a producer or director that's off camera, you can set that microphone as the lowest priority. So if there's a good conversation, the high priority microphones will take control, but the director or the producer, if they're trying to cut in, you'll be able to hear them, but they'll be lower in the mix. They won't be the highest priority microphone. So you can actually pick and choose in the auto mix which ones will be controlled in the auto mix and what priority those microphones are. All right, next up, I want to show you how you load in samples so that if you want to add additional sound effects to the sound pads here, I want to show you how you import samples from external media. So in this case, we're going to load in samples that I've recorded and onto the SD card, and we'll show how they get mapped onto the different buttons. So we do that with the samples tab up at the top. We have 4 banks of 6 different pads. So let's just go over to, it comes with 6 pads that are full with example sounds. You can always remap those. You can change it. It'll be the exact same process that I'm about to show you. So we'll go over to bank C, which right now has no input, no effects, no sounds added to it. We just touch the sound that we want to adjust. We want to load that sample from the disk. It will ask you which disk you want to get the sound from. Since I'm recording to the USB drive, I'm going to load the sound from my SD card. And we click load. And you see I've got a couple of different sound effects here. So let's imagine that you wanted to load in your podcast intro into slot number 1. We'll load that in. We can choose how we want that sound to respond when the button is pressed. Do we want to have it play and pause, queue up for the next one? Do we want to play and then just stop so that you can move on? Do we want to do things like loop, have that play over and over again? Do we want it to be a beep sound, so a momentary switch, so that it will only play for as long as you're holding the button down? We're just going to make this a play and stop. It by default, it gets named with the file name, but you can always rename what you want that pad to be with the on-screen keyboard. And I should note that if you do have an external like USB keyboard, you can plug that in to make the typing easier. I thought that was interesting. And then you can also adjust the sound, and you can do some minor editing to that sample. So if you know that it's recorded really loud, a lot of times like stock music will come very loud, you can adjust how loud you want that to be with the trim. So you can adjust the trim and make it quieter by a certain number of decibels. You can also trim silence off the start or the end. You can say whether or not you want that to fade in or fade out, and you can do that over a course of, I think, up to a second. So you can have a second of fade in or fade out by adjusting the sliders. And again, these are also done by the rotary encoder. So if you don't want to get your fingers onto the screen, you want to be able to see, you can always just use the rotary encoders. So I'm going to trim that one down, for example, by 5 decibels. And it's really easy. Once you're done there, you just click the X and you can do that for any of the other ones. So let's imagine we've got our podcast intro and we want to load a sample. We know we have a mid-roll ad that's going to happen. So we can choose the ad spot. We want to load that in. We want to edit that. We know that that's recorded loud. And we want to trim that down by a few dB. We can do that. And then we return home. Now we have 2 different buttons that are illuminated. So we can, if we wanted to start our podcast, we could just trigger that and do our podcast intro.
What's happening, Booth Junkies? Mike Delgadio here with another episode of the Booth Junkie Podcast.
And it will play through. You can continue to talk over it. If you want to stop the sound, you just press the button again, and it will stop when you, depending on how you have it chosen. So if it's play and stop, which is how I had that set, when I hit that button again, it will stop and reset the cursor back to the beginning. If it's play and then pause, it will play through and then pause. And then if you hit the button again, it will continue to play from that point. Same thing with the advertisement. So if it gets to the point where it's time for the mid-roll advertisement, we can just go and hit the trigger.
And now a word from our sponsor.
And it plays. We're not gonna do the whole thing, but all of that is available here. And from the overview, we also have that available as a slider for us. It's labeled as 11 and 12, so we can adjust how loud those samples will be.
What's happening, Booth Junkies?
So you have freedom to adjust it.
Of the Booth Junkie Podcast.
Okay, that's enough, Mike. So you have a great deal of freedom with how those samples get played. So you can have sound effects, you can have intros, you can have advertisements, anything that you can load in as a sound, it will play it. So I did mention that you do have multiple different inputs. So you have you can attach via Bluetooth. So if you're doing a live call-in type show and people are calling a phone, you can have that phone attached via Bluetooth and do a mix minus to send that back to a caller. I don't have anybody to call me, but you can set that up. You have lots of different inputs. So you could have an external music player, say sounds that are coming from a laptop. You can connect your phone via Bluetooth over to it, and we'll look at the connections on the back. You can also connect this to a computer, so if you want it to be included on your live stream. Okay, so next I want to show you, we'll just do a demonstration of how you can connect an external source other than a microphone. So we'll just use a phone as an example, and we'll play music from a phone using a Bluetooth connection, just to illustrate another way that you can connect to the DLZ creator. So we'll first make sure that Bluetooth is turned on. So I'm going to come over to the settings. I'll come over to the Bluetooth tab, and I want to make sure that Bluetooth is enabled. So we'll touch the switch there. We'll enable Bluetooth, and it will say that it is updatable, unpaired, and discovered. And you see it automatically connected to my phone, which had paired previously. So you can always just come into your Bluetooth settings. You can unpair. It will disconnect. You can touch it, and it will repair. And it will automatically connect that device to the DLZ creator, whatever device you're doing over Bluetooth. So now we'll come over to, I use Epidemic Sound often for music. So what we'll do now is we'll go back to the overview screen, and we'll pick a song just from Epidemic Sound. So this is music that you can include without risk of a copyright strike. So in this case, I'm just going to pick one of the ones that it suggests. So I'm picking a song, and we can see that it is mapped on channel 9 and 10. So I can adjust how loud that sound will be. And you notice that it is automatically ducking. So as I be quiet, it brings that volume back up. And as soon as I talk, it brings the volume down so that my microphone always shines through. But if I ever talk and I pause, it brings it back. So it's automatically will do that ducking for you. So you don't have to worry about setting up sidechain compression and all of that. it will automatically just take care of making sure that the microphone inputs always shine through. Epidemic sound. Pretty cool. So that's how we bring in external sources. While we're talking about external sources, why don't we take a look at the back of the device to see all of the different things that you can connect to the DLZ creator. I'm going to lift this up here and do it very carefully, since I am actually recording to the device here. So I'm going to walk you through some of the different inputs and configuration that we have on the back. So just working from one side to the other, first we do have a real power switch, so you can power the device down when you're not using it. You can see that I've got an SSD plugged into the USB input, so I'm recording to this SSD. And right next to it, there is an SD card. So the micro SD, this is where we loaded the sounds from. You can also just record to this. You don't necessarily have to have an external SSD to record to. You can record right to the SD card. There is an Ethernet jack. So if you want to plug this into your network to get firmware updates or anything like that, you can. There is a headphone style input jack. So if you do have an external media player that has a headphone type jack, you can plug that into this slot. Below that, there is a USB-C connection that allows you to connect it to the computer. So this will work as an interface for the computer. So if you're doing something like live streaming. Next to that, you do have the 4 inputs for the 4 different headphone mixes. 4 different headphones can be attached to this. There's separate outputs that will go out to a set of monitors, so like loudspeaker type monitors. So if you are broadcasting in your studio or you're sending out to a PA to a live broadcast, like with people in the room with you, you can have that connection. You have a pair of inputs, 1/4-inch jack inputs. So for an instrument, you can put that into items number 5 and 6. That could be a stereo pair. And then you have 4 combi jacks for the 4 different microphones that you can plug in. So this could be either a 1/4-inch jack if you want to bypass the preamplifiers, or an XLR if you wanted to go through the preamplifiers. So you can see lots of different connections on the back. Each headphone, I mentioned that there's 4 headphones on the back. Each headphone can have its own mix. And we do that by, once we're on the overview screen, if you click into the headphone itself, each one of these headphones, you can see that you can adjust how much of each channel you want to have heard in the particular listener, whoever's using those headphones. So as the host, I might want to take my voice down a little bit and have my guest's voice be louder. For example, I could adjust it. Whereas the guest, they may not be comfortable hearing themselves, so you may need to move them down and make the host louder. You can have it where it's just everybody's the same. You can have it become a custom mix, so touch custom, where we can configure it on our own, or you can do a quick mix where it will just mix it all automatically for you. So there are different choices that you can have for each of the 4 people using headphones. Next, once you have all of these settings set up, you can tell the device to memorize these settings using the snapshot feature. So by clicking snapshots, you can go through and adjust and tell it to memorize all of these different settings. So if you do Monday through Friday, perhaps you do some live streaming. And on the weekends, you you do a podcast with a friend. You can actually do those different setups just by having that snapshot memorized. So you set it up once, and you can always be able to recall that state just by clicking the save button. Give the settings, the current configuration, a name, and it will get memorized. So you can see I've already created one called the podcast setup. So by touching that, I'll come back and bring all of those settings back for my podcast setup. I don't want to mess with that now because that may change what we're hearing. But it's very easy to just go back and recall the previous state so that you can simplify your setup, especially if you're doing something like a podcast. If you do want to do recording, you can go into the recording. You see I'm recording here, but you can see that there are different configurations that you can set up for the recording. You can say whether or not you want the recording itself to bypass the processing. You can say if you want the recording to be post-fader, so after the recording will know if you've changed any of these sliders, so recording exactly what's gone on the air. Or you can say, I want to record it pre-fader so that the people who are live are hearing the mix. But if you're then going to go back and edit, say as a YouTube video, you want to edit that audio and put that audio into a DAW, you can tell it to record it pre-fader. You can tell it to automatically do the ducking, and you can indicate whether or not you want to do a one-tap, just record and record with those settings as opposed to it asking you. And it will tell you that the recording's in process. And you can also see that up here on the screen that you've been recording, how long that recording has been. So there you have it. That is a quick overview. There's more to it. There's a lot more stuff that we could demonstrate, but hopefully that gives you a really good sense of the capabilities of what this device can do to help you decide if this is right for your studio. So that's all I have for you today. But I hope that helps. I really hope that was a beneficial. Please leave me a comment if it helped. But that's all I have for you today. Now, go get yourself a microphone and maybe a nice little recording studio that will take care of all of your recording needs for your podcast or for your live stream. But get yourself a microphone so that you can get out there and you can record something amazing. Thanks. We'll talk to you next time. Take care.